Okay, I'm going to call our village board meeting for December 6th to order. Roll call, please.
Sam Kaufman, here. Gary Herzberg, here. Phil Willems.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Bill Rano.
Okay, first we have our confirmation of open meeting compliance, public postings, official notices, online availability.
I can confirm that the meetings were posted in our public posting places last Thursday, the 2nd, published in the newspaper, the Tribune on Friday the 3rd, as well as uploaded last week onto the village's website.
Thank you, Todd. So we have a special meeting tonight with the Town of Springfield Board, so I'd like to welcome Jim, Dan, and Dave to our meeting and your meeting, so I'll allow you guys to call your meeting to order.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm going to call it a regular special meeting for the Town of Springfield Board member. Note the 3 members that are present at this time, so we have a working quorum. And again, thank you for taking the time to sit down and meet with us.
Absolutely, and welcome to our board chambers. So first, let's start out, called order. They've called order, discussion, take action on adopted, updated Town of Springfield, Village of Waunakee intergovernmental agreement. Action by both boards.
I think our planner, Jason Valerius, is prepared to walk us through the work that's been done to date, and we'll take questions then after that. Jason, let me know if you want any exhibits brought up to the screen. I'll be prepared to do that.
Sure. Todd, why don't you go ahead and bring up the, from the packet, the map from the town's comp plan?
Okay.
So I think you'll be able to identify that in there. It's packet page 13 maybe. So I would offer as a general overview of this agreement.
Is this it?
It is. It is. I would offer as an overview of this agreement that it is largely, it is almost entirely consistent with and similar to the prior agreement. I'm forgetting offhand with the date of adoption. That 10-year agreement had lapsed several years ago, and parties from both sides took the initiative to have some discussion, and it bumped along for a little bit, but we got together with a final revised draft. Many of the edits were not really all that substantive. The town had their planner, Mark Roffers, go through and take a look at items that kind of really diving in a little deeper to ask, well, what does this really mean when the document says what happens in the town that is within the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction area is going to be consistent with the village's subdivision ordinance. And so we went through and reached a comfort level that the language that's in this agreement is compatible both with the town's comp plans and policies in those plans and ordinance, and also with the village's plan and ordinance. And so the town's future land use map is here, and also represented in the document is the village's future land use map. And
Do you want me to scroll to that, or do you want to stick here for a moment?
Go ahead and scroll to that. One item that we may consider for a very minor amendment with the approval tonight is to swap out or add to the map the version of this map that shows the entirety of the extraterritorial jurisdiction. So there's a future land use map version of that, Todd.
Is there?
Yeah, if you scroll through the.
Is this it here? Oh, nope.
So it's in there. One thing I want to point out when he gets there, most of, as you saw from the town's map, most of the town is planned for agricultural preservation.
Is that it?
It is, thank you. And the same is true of the village's map, and so the area in the town is.
Sorry, I'm just zooming in on
Yep.
the most notable areas there.
Right, so this is the area that is the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction. I would point out that the village included in their future land use map an area for rural neighborhood development. That's a reflection of what's there right now. If you're able to flip back and forth conveniently.
Oh my gosh. Where do you want?
What I can tell you though is that on the town's map, this area is a little bigger. And so the town had planned for
Can
some
we go to the
modest.
town map, Jason?
Yeah, the town map. The town had planned for modest growth of that area. And that was one of the things that we talked about, and I think the village is entirely comfortable with the notion that that cluster of rural housing could grow a little bit, but not by much. The one thing that I would say is genuinely new in this agreement is there was a statement that I'll direct you to, Todd, on the last page of text of the primary agreement before the signatures, which is packet page 9. And so it's that clause J right there. So seek to protect the rural agricultural character of lands within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the village that are visible from Highway 19 while still allowing rural residential development on lands designated as rural neighborhood area on Exhibit B. That was what I just pointed out. And where new non-farm residential development is permitted under the agreement, the visibility of such development from the Highway 19 shall be minimized, subject to final determination of the town board via techniques like thoughtful placement with respect to existing vegetation, topographic changes, setbacks, planting of new vegetation, and berming. So the village, some of you may recall or know that you have in your plan community separation zones that seek to protect from development and preserve for agricultural use your entry corridors from the south on Q and from the east on 19. The village's plan didn't really address the west 19 corridor because that wasn't really a growth corridor per se, but this is something that attempts to maintain the rural character of that corridor, and there was a sympathetic ear for that sentiment from the town in our discussions. That's consistent with what the town has been seeking as well. So that's about all I thought ought to be pointed out, and I'm happy to answer questions that anyone may have about the agreement.
We'll let you guys start if you have any questions or comments.
Well, the only, unfortunately, prior town board members allowed our agreement to lapse with you, which was, really non-intentional on our part. And we've always had an excellent working relationship with the village, and related people in the village, so I have no need to try and start any wars. One of the things we talked about is that, just so everybody understands, we do have a proposed subdivision possibly coming in along that Highway 19 corridor, just so everyone understands, and it would be behind the acre farm, and so it would be, a piece of that, and would bump up and come into that Paloma Drive, so not that everybody understands that's in the planning process. It hasn't come forward, but I just wanted to be upfront. One of the things we discussed, and we wanted to try and get at least this much done and move forward with it, but in the future, some of the areas that you are showing for non-growth, like the green space around Waunakee, we're in total agreement with. So we, once we get this done and hopefully the stupid pandemic goes away, that we can actually have real meetings and stuff, we'd like to sit down and discuss that, because we wouldn't necessarily want to force any of our landowners, but a lot of these landowners, we have what's called a transfer development rights program, and so that would work. If some of these farm areas, a lot of these are generational farms, I'll put it. They farm for 2 or 3 generations. They have no desire to have growth in them, and you guys don't want growth in them. So, if we deed restrict them, that they can't do it, they could sell the development rates somewhere else in the town. And the main thing that we set up our transfer development rights program for is not necessarily for all new growth, but there's 300 plus sections or plots of land in the town of Springfield that have been created since, the beginning of time. And our goal is to try and take some of them and increase the density on it, instead of having somebody that have, a 5 or 10 acre lot be able allow them to take those lot sizes down. We're finding more and more, every year we get a couple of them. And so that's our goal. So then some of these areas that you are identifying as protection areas that would be of mutual interest for us. And like I said, we would sit down and work those details out with you. But I think it can be a win-win for both of our communities. And like I said, we share a lot of common interests with each other, and we want to be good neighbors.
I love your comments, Jim. I feel the same way. We don't talk. We haven't talked because we have such a good relationship. And you're right, this should have been done a couple of years ago. We shouldn't have waited this long. And, now we're here at the table and everything looks to be worked out. And we just want to continue those open lines of communication. That's such a critical component.
One of the things I just want to mention too that probably didn't get mentioned, but a lot of the changes that were made in our agreement actually is just taking Dane County. Everything used to say Village of Waunakee, Town of Springfield, Dane County. Well, Dane County has been taken out a lot of that because for some of you that don't know, we're one of the 6 towns that left Dane County zoning for reasons of our own. And so that was something, that was Mark Rolfer's main task when the first 2 times we met with him, just as to take out, Dane County in there. So we have our own zoning now, and, they thought the world was gonna come to an end, but actually we found that it's worked quite well. So again, that's a win-win for us working with you, is that we don't have that third party putting their fingers in the pie. How's that?
Fair enough. I'll open up to board members. Any comments or questions for Jason or our friends from Springfield?
I have a question. I guess my first thing is I was excited to see one of our future goals for the bike lane, that we could talk about that. I think that is a great regional connector. I guess if someone could maybe talk on page 8, under H, the annexation, is that standard for an agreement like this? Just because that piece in particular has different, on our maps, it's under Springfield as agriculture preservation, but ours is community development. So I just wanted to ask if that's normal.
The village's map. So in comprehensive planning process, the village identified these, I want to say that's about 60 acres.
Yeah, 60 acres roughly.
Yeah, as a plausible growth zone, reflecting kind of the incremental growth pattern out in that direction. The statutory setup here really gives a little more power to the village than to the town when it comes to annexation and growth. And so that the village doesn't necessarily need to ask permission absent any kind of agreement. In this case, the village is planning what I would say is a modest amount of growth into the town in this 10-year period. Whether it actually happens, depending on landowner interest and market conditions. But having this agreement provides some predictability. Both parties have discussed this already and agreed that there wouldn't be a fight over that. And likewise, elsewhere, the village would hold off, absent any amendment to this agreement, the village would hold off on annexing other lands besides that 60 acres during this 10-year period.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else? Well, hearing no other comments, I think we're in agreement on everything. I am going to make the motion to adopt the updated Town of Springfield Village of Waunakee intergovernmental agreement with an amendment to Exhibit D that displays the entire ETJ area within the Town of Springfield. Do I
I'll
have-
second it.
Okay, I have a motion and second by Nyla Fry. Any other comments? Questions? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, and I'll call the question. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept the agreement as presented for this evening?
I make a motion, Town of Springfield accepts the agreement.
Okay, I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried unanimous. Do you want to put your John Henry down now while I'm standing here?
You're sitting.
Do you have a copy you'd like to use?
We have one?
I don't think so.
We don't, okay.
Sorry, we'll have to get that arranged for you.
That's fine. We'll actually have a, if you want to get it, if you can, or whatever, you work it out with Diana, we'll actually have a town board meeting tomorrow evening. So if there's any other questions for us, I would like to try and set it up that we try and have at least, you know, even if it isn't the full boards, but it's nice if we could at least sit down once a year and see if there's any questions or thoughts, or maybe you have some ideas, or we have some ideas. So we should try and do that when things hopefully come back to normal. So with that, I would like to adjourn our meeting and we'll get out of your hair. Okay.
One note, Diana, if you could be, I'm sorry, do you need a motion on that, Jim?
To adjourn?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimous.
And Diana, the edit on that, which would be good to just get a new copy, Caitlin Steen's no longer the village clerk, so you could put my name on there for the counter signature.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
So with that edit, then we'll coordinate the signatures.
We don't get any beer then?
I guess it's
Good
different in
evening.
Springfield.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. All right.
That one's done. All right, then we can move on. Our consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or look for a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Phil Owens, second by Sam, was that you, Sam? Second by Sam Kaufman. Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Then we have public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a comment on anything that's on or off the agenda for this evening?
I don't have any forms from the public, but
I have a comment.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna say thank you to all village staff, personnel, for our Light the Night celebration that we had, all the work that was put in, by the committee and the people that took care of it, our security, all the way up and down the line. So I really appreciate, everybody who stepped up, and it was a very nice event for the community.
On-
I don't know who took care of the weather, but good job on that one compared to tonight.
On the sad side, somebody stole our chicken from our lighted display.
That is sad.
And that is sad. It's a $500, $600 lighted rooster, all LED, and first time in 20 years anybody ever stole a display out of the park.
what the cluck?
Yeah.
So,
There's a reward of a dozen LED eggs. And I'll have a picture for Roberta if she wants to have an expose or.
Drive around and see who has a chicken out.
This could be front page stuff.
so that is an unfortunate thing, Phil.
This
I
is
agree.
evil, you know.
Chris?
This is what evil looks like.
So the board saw an agenda that came out today, but you had already been notified that this Wednesday, we do have a special village board meeting. It's going to be at 6 PM at the library. That's to receive a presentation from our consultant. Is Sue still here? Oh, there you are. That Sue, I, and many others have been working with over the past several months related to the aquatics facility planning. So just wanted to note that that's this Wednesday, 6 o'clock, library. Members of the work team of various citizens from different walks of life are also invited to be there. And we hope to have the presentation plus some good back and forth with board members to gain more information on the proposal and the research that they completed related to aquatics.
I look forward to hearing it. And I would just say thank you also to the village staff for Saturday, with the Santa being at Centennial Park and all the work that went into that from everybody and making sure that everybody was safe. Our security was awesome for the event. So, we obviously had the unfortunate situation happen, and we stepped up and made sure that we kept our citizens safe, and it was a very nice event. So, thank you to all those folks. Any other comments? Okay. Let's see here. First item we have is a public hearing. Public hearing and discussion to take action on proposed Village of Waunakee local hazard mitigation plan. So I think, Scott, are you presenting on this one? Or saying anything, or is it?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. And then we'll open the public hearing after you present. Go ahead.
So, I guess for starters, I wouldn't necessarily call this a true village hazard mitigation plan. This is more of a getting on board with the county mitigation plan. Every so many years, I believe it's been 5 years now, since the county last updated their natural hazard mitigation plan. And it was time to do it again. It would go live in 2023. And they reached out and solicited any municipalities that wanted to jump on board with the county as opposed to creating their own mitigation plan. Part of it, we've had to sit through quite a few meetings. Unfortunately, Caitlin was kind of the main go-to here, so I kind of get to speak for her as well. We got sat through a bunch of meetings and kind of what was all taking place in that, and each municipality that wanted to come on board had to put together something to be able to throw into the Dane County plan to become part of it. What you see in front of you, it sounds very vague, and it's by design. You can go through, during this process, you could go through and kind of look at certain projects you may want to do and that kind of thing and submit them. Or you could leave it vague, and as projects arise, then you're able to note those. The biggest reason, in my eyes, to be able to join the county like this is when it comes to grant funding. It's a lot easier to get grant funding at a county level than at a local level. And so as that funding comes through, it's a lot easier to get your hands on some of it. On the back end, it's also important to have these mitigation documents in place should something, God forbid, happen. It's a lot easier to get FEMA-style reimbursement. So if we were to have some kind of big flooding event or natural hazard incident, and we need to start looking at some kind of a state of emergency and reimbursement and those kinds of things, it's a lot easier to go through FEMA to get reimbursement for those types of deals. So that's kind of where we are. This portion of the process is letting the public have any kind of comment into it. Those of you that keep an eye on the news on a regular basis, the county put out their big one for public comment through the news channels. I don't know if anybody saw that on the news for last week. I think it was last week sometime, for any kind of public comment to come in. And then we have to do that at the local level as well. So that's kind of where we are.
Had any comments before I open the public hearing?
Nope, just appreciation for Scott. Scott has, in addition to being the EMS director, has fulfilled the role of emergency operations manager for the village since we adopted our last version of the plan. So he's an important partner of ours in this work.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to open up the public hearing for anybody who has any questions, comments in regards to this topic. Any news, any papers turned in?
No, sir.
Anybody? Okay, then I'm going to close our public hearing. Board members' comments, questions, or motions?
I'd make a motion to move to approve and submit the Dane County Emergency Management and Village of Waunakee Municipal what do we got here? I need to read it here.
Mitigation.
Mitigation strategy worksheet. There we go.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second.
second by Aaron Moran. Any other comments? Scott, thank you, as Todd said, for your work in this. Caitlin, thank you. You're not here, but thank you anyway for that work. All right, so I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, under new business, discuss and take action on test fit design proposals for remodeling the former village library, 710 South Street, for village hall use, and the approval of phase 2 design proposal for design services. Todd?
Thanks, Chris. With us in the audience tonight is Becky Brown. Becky is with Creative Business Interiors, a great Waunakee local company. We've been engaged with CBI for, it's been a few years now, it feels like.
Pre-COVID, so yeah.
Yeah. to pursue the potential for relocation of our Village Hall facilities. Tonight we're presenting the results of Phase 1 test fit work, which accomplishes two things. Kind of running the rigor of the building, the existing facility, our needs by evaluating this space, the condition of the former library, its ability from a codes perspective to handle these functions from Village Hall in a remodeled state, as well as vetting and estimating those costs for us to assist in decision-making going forward. So tonight, after we present the plans, the proposal for you, what you'll be asked for tonight is to consider the next step, Phase 2, of this design work, which would take the fit test, assuming we're comfortable with that plan, and turn it into drawings and plans that then can be publicly bid for construction. So that tonight we'd be asking you to approve moving forward with step 2, utilizing CBI for that next step. So I did take a look. I don't know if you thought I would, but I looked at the bottom right corner of the plan set and I realized that we are on version 13. Is that right? We're on revision number 13. Now, let me get to the, okay. So, last time we spoke, last time the village board had a look at this, this is the vacant main level, upper level of the former library. And if you recall, the last time we took a kick, we were contemplating essentially considering whether we could fit the entirety of the Village Hall function onto this level. As you responded and as staff responded, that was really daunting. We definitely felt the need to look at a design that involved both levels of the building. The result of that, for lack of better words, puts the functioning Village Hall office space all in the upper level, and then the village board chambers and storage to the lower level of the building. One reason why we've gone to 13 revisions thus far on this is because some parameters have changed over the course of our process. One notable one is that the food pantry has determined after, and I'll give them credit, after a lot of thought, I mean, there's tape around on the floors out there outlining the potential layout of a food pantry function. And as the demand on the pantry has grown and they've felt their own expansion, they determined that to enter this space, it would be, if not out of the gate, too constraining for them. And they'd be feeling the need to expand beyond the capacity of their space in this building. So the letters in your packet where they graciously thanked us for our effort towards this, but indicated that they're no longer, it's no longer a good fit for them as a food pantry. So that led to some quick changes just last week, or maybe the week before. I think it was just last week. It really doesn't change much in terms of the Village Hall's design on the main floor, but what it does do is provides us with a lot more storage space, which was a concern of staff as I've discussed these plans with staff, as well as reasonable room to grow and expand as our needs change. So with that, I would like to walk you through the proposed first floor. Though it'd probably be even easier to look at your version that's right in front of you. But here you have a lobby area, and I'll note to keep in mind that this will be accessible from both levels of Village Hall, of the facility. So you can note that this upper entrance is from that upper parking lot, the one we'll actually be discussing later, related to our agreement with the school district, and then the lower lot via stairs or the elevator provides a secondary access. So this lobby does address the fact that we will have citizens coming in from both sides of the building. We split the municipal function into two halves, call this sort of the administrative half of the building, and this being the development and engineering and public works half of the building. So, if I can just go over there first. So this is a suite that encompasses the engineering function. This isn't exactly the final layout, but this will be where the arrangement of desks will be for the inspectors right down here. Then you've got the three offices, Public Works Director, Engineer, and Community Development Director. You kind of see up right in here is a municipal court clerk, and that might strike you as odd that that's its own spot, but the security of the court records is really critical and very difficult to establish that office space, for example, in the administrative area, as a closed-off secure space. So that function has its own enclosed space, but with access to some office equipment, copier, et cetera here. And then its own unique counter, because the court clients are, have a very specific purpose as they come to Village Hall, and those needs can be met right there at that counter. Becky, I think we need to swing this door inward instead of outward, because you'll smash the people who are at the counter for engineering, public works, and community development. So also on that side of the room is a large conference room that'll be equipped with teleconferencing capabilities. Part of our quote for equipment and services from AVI, related to the technology and the boardroom hybrid, was also to outfit this with video conferencing capabilities. So these will all be modular tables to move into different shapes as needed. I could see this being the room that we set up perhaps for in-person absentee voting during those times of year. So that'll be a very, very usable space for different reasons. When you look at the budget, which we will in a moment, you'll see that there's a good deal of money spent on plumbing and fixtures. That's because both the bathrooms on this level and the bathrooms on the lower level today, and even when we were in the library, were in really not good condition. Those are completely redone. We have ADA issues to address and capacity issues to address for the way the building will be used. So there is a major investment in improvements to those areas. Becky, you can call me if I'm screwing up and jump in as needed.
Been good.
We've got a staff break room or a meeting room, and then going over to the administrative side of the building, you have the finance function including the village clerk, deputy clerk, a flex space, and the executive assistant. All are kind of working in a space that is sort of a team environment where there is multiple points of access to the front counter. So, the executive assistant at one moment might be serving someone, or the deputy clerk, and along with good visibility from other offices to that front main counter within the lobby. The deputy administrator's office are also located here. I'll mention one note that was another very recent addition. We don't have to sprinkle the building. That may have been a pretty serious funding element that we would have been thinking seriously about our project if that was required. It's not, if we provide reasonable access exits, and that would be happening at these two doors that exit the building. Now, currently, those exit to a concrete pad that is standalone. You go to a concrete pad, and it's surrounded by grass. What we need to do in both cases is extend the pad with a paved sidewalk to the front side of the building, so there is reasonable and accessible movement to get out to the building to a common public space. I don't know if, Becky, if you have more information to share on that, but we did do a good deal of diligence to make certain that we were addressing the code issues as it related to fire suppression and access and egress. That's the deal?
Yeah.
So that did add in some cost for pavement pavement surface for sidewalk. I'll take a pause before we go downstairs. This is the main functioning area of Village Hall. I would say that it allows a little room for expansion in that, let me zoom in. At least over in this portion of the building, this is a flex working space. No staff person is at this point assigned to sit there as their workspace, as is this space here. That's also a flex workspace. So we do have some room, perhaps to accommodate an intern in the future, or newly added staff positions, or a full-time or part-time receptionist. That is in the capabilities of this space. All right, so again, I'll pause to see if you'd like to discuss these office areas. Yep, Nyla?
I see there's a freestanding wall with a TV monitor. Is that to give people directions and information? Okay.
Exactly. It also creates, we want to make sure that as people enter the building, there isn't confusion as to where they head. So while it's signage, it also sort of establishes this ending point. As people come in, they will stop there and they'll look left or right and make their choices to the office that they would need to attend to.
Who greets people?
I guess it depends on their purpose. The majority of our typical daily traffic relates to engineering and inspections. Typically, the engineering and inspection traffic, they know where they're headed. They're gonna come in, they're headed straight for Tracy or to the inspector. As for other members of the public, and I think maybe Becky, you can jump in about the design here and our ability to engage the traffic as they come in, but it will be intended for the primary first point of access or first point of contact being at this counter space here.
And that is right. So as we move through design development, it moves into elevation form. It'll make a little bit, the picture will kind of come clear, but strategically placed counters and keeping the visibility and opportunities for signage will be clear to help direct the flow of traffic, either coming from that front vestibule or from upstairs, from the lower level up the stairs.
Yeah, that's a good point. The direction coming this way, there again is the counter space as is identical here. So there you have the visibility from the deputy clerk serving that function as primary point of contact. We can go downstairs if you're ready. So, again, this was the space over here that the food pantry was considering. That comes back to being usable storage space and expansion space for the village. We had identified storage here. That now becomes a flex space. We might consider that as a spot to put in a conference table or a set of flexible tables where the board could perhaps leave to meet for closed session. Although it's only a flight of stairs up to the other meeting space. But it's possible to arrange that for when needed makeshift closed session space. So the design, I won't list this as a grand governmental meeting room space. The ceilings are much lower than we have. This is probably about the typical ceiling height in the lower level of that building. So, so what I actually am excited about is the design and investment we're putting into the hybrid meeting technology. And that's what's gonna take this room, that's what's gonna make this room really special. You've got, the design would have 3 large LED monitors here and one on the back wall. Your audience, the village board, and staff. I'll be honest, I think the typical layout for our meetings, and today's meeting is a good example, is a smaller gallery. Especially when we incorporate the hybrid meeting technology and the virtual participation. And by participation, I mean active participation. Like when we have public comments, the hybrid meeting technology will allow us to engage citizens participating online to actively participating in public hearings and public comment. So I would speculate this is going to be your typical arrangement of your boardroom. Otherwise, the lower level does open up this as a little more of a wider berth for public access to the meeting. And beyond that, improvements to the restrooms, again, as required by code. The bathrooms over there are currently the little tot toilets that are about this high. So we have work to do there. But that's the lower level, and I'll pause to take questions or comments on that. And again, Becky, help me out.
Yeah, I might just add on like flow of, there's the lower level parking lot, so there's the nice vestibule, that'll be an entrance point, and opportunity to have directional signage to kind of either work your way into the village board chambers or maybe up the stairs. And then additionally, if visitors are coming from upstairs, they can come down that back stairwell or down the elevator. And so as they come off the elevator there, again, a nice opportunity for directional signage to be able to kind of direct where to go downstairs.
Natalie, you had a...
Yeah, I have a concern. I've attended village meetings where we've gone over 34 guests. And with this, they could be out there and the doors could be open. It wasn't ideal, but at least it worked. What will we do with, I mean, I know you're thinking with the hybrid situation that we won't go over that, but there's always that possibility that we'll have a topic where we'll have more than 34 guests. So I'm wondering if there's any way to put the mechanical in some of that future space and have space to expand if we have more. Because it's not ideal to have to move a meeting to another location.
Well, I'll admit that that's the reason why we're going to the library for our aquatics presentation on Wednesday. It's not been unusual. Sure, it's not convenient, but we have good facilities as alternatives to us. And we as staff have become accustomed to making those moves as necessary. I think that's a reality. Frankly, it's a reality of this space, and would be a reality of that space too.
But I think we have to understand that listening sessions we've had at the library, the acoustics or something's off with that. I have problems hearing. I've been at meetings at the library, and there's a lot of people who can't hear what's going on very well. And I just wonder about having some overflow area in what we're doing, because it's easier to take care of something on blueprints rather than to have to live with something that's inadequate in the future.
Yeah, good point. I can tell you that the library within the past utilized ARPA funding to purchase new equipment for that community room. And if you're able to come on Wednesday, I think you'll see an improvement in the technology that they have for audio, and also improvement with the filming capabilities there. Our experiment sort of with a board meeting, what was that, 4, 5, 6 months ago, presented the challenges of that room, and they've already made some investments to improve that. So maybe withhold full judgment on that space until Wednesday night. But I do appreciate your concern. One challenge with this space is we're limited to about 40 parking stalls. So there is a limitation in frankly, the overall capacity to, just from a parking perspective. And that may even, Becky, be why you limited some of the meeting room capacity, right?
Yeah, let me just check my notes on that real quick, Todd.
You asked about the mechanical. That room as it's shown right now is jam-packed with centralized HVAC equipment. I would speculate that would be nearly impossible to relocate.
Okay, so
Bill, you're
that-
familiar with that room there.
That's the central location for all that.
So it's already there?
Yeah, it's already.
Oh, okay, I didn't understand that, okay, I didn't,
And it is, it's past inch.
okay.
Well, yeah, Brian brought up a point that if we're broadcasting live, which we will be at most of our meetings, in the flex space, we could even run
television.
Okay, thank you, good idea,
Yeah,
okay,
that'd be one possible approach.
okay.
Is there a max capacity for the room? People?
Yes, and I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm looking here to see if I had it in my notes.
I'm just looking, the way the chairs are laid out, you could probably go to the top of the page with more chairs if you really wanted to, towards the
We-
janitors, if we wanted to add more people.
We had a version of this that packed more chairs in, and I believe the concern to demonstrate that capacity related to the parking limitations of the space. Because if we're to demonstrate that sort of capacity, we also have to, by our own code, demonstrate adequate parking allotment. So,
I'm unable to put my fingertips on it, but I can follow up with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
that's the best I can answer that for you, but we can, essentially, it's the fire inspector that establishes,
In the end, it will,
in the end.
right. Square foot calculation showed 34, but if the fire inspector will allow, it might be more. So, but I want to confirm.
Are we at questions time, or are you?
Yeah, we're at questions, and the next thing I would do is want to walk through some elements of the budget with you, and then we'll talk about what the next steps would be. But let's pause again on the design.
We have another question.
Yep.
On page 8 of 9, on the creative business interiors, it says the quote expires on 11/1/21.
Have a reprint.
I think it's because I had that a month ago,
We
and
had it prepared for last.
Okay,
board
that's what
meetings.
that's what I thought, but I just wanted to verify that. Thank you.
remember version 13.
Okay, thank you.
Good catch.
Well, I'll have to admit, I'm losing my affection for this site. This, the cost is growing, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have any plans to sell this building, and so, and it's not that great of a building we're moving into, and you've left off the landscaping and parking repairs that are gonna have to be done outside, and I can see it easily another $250,000 going outside of the building just to get to new standards, and then we are gonna be way underparked. I just, I'm kinda losing my affection. I'm gonna have to be resold on the project. That's it.
Okay. Other comments? Questions?
I think my biggest thing is kind of just what Phil said of the outside. It's just hard to, without the outside, like, what do we need to do there? And how does that affect this, I guess? But, I mean, this is a good design for what we have. I like the little lobby with the chairs and kind of the like little welcoming sections.
Bill, any comments?
I guess mine, and you guys have probably dealt with it the whole time, the entry space, the sidewise of it, it's not how you'd set up a business. I don't think you would come in to look to the side, you'd have somebody in the front. I don't know, I know the mechanical space is probably very difficult to do that in. I know it's some of that when you come in here, you're angling along, trying to figure out who's helping you, which is based on the building is how it is. I'm kind of with Phil, I don't know if we're trying to make the building work. I'm not saying that's the wrong idea, I'm just trying to figure out, is it the best idea? Is there do we have a competing alternative? Obviously, this is the competing alternative. Is the library space a better space for, if we, not for the, I mean, for the meeting spaces, I suspect it would be, but anyway, that's all I got.
Gary? You know, I'd sometimes like to think, gosh, maybe we just stay where we're at. But I do look at the limited space there is in the downstairs of this building. We're pretty limited on any expansion down there. I mean, there's some room, but not a lot. This gives us, you know, I don't know what the square footage difference is, Todd, between 2 floors there and 2 floors here.
This is 10 and that's 12.
So, I mean, we gain some space, it's just the cost involved in that remodeling. You gotta kind of weigh that to gain, you know, a couple thousand square feet, is it worth it? But I like this design, and I think the idea that, you know, giving people the capability to remotely come into a meeting, I think that, I think people accept that now, they're used to it, that technology is accepted anywhere, so, I mean, you could get to the point to say, well, you can never make that room big enough, because, you know, I probably, what was maybe 30, the most we ever had in here, probably inside with chairs. I mean, we've got, what, 20 some here right now? So we took those chairs away, maybe there was 30 chairs in here in the past. So, I mean, I understand the design, it gives us more space, it gives us more room to grow, but it's trying to weigh that cost to make that happen versus trying to do it here, so. I just need to look at it some more. Cause I don't believe there's a lot of cost at the library to do outdoor, I mean, the parking's the parking we have, right? We don't have to do a lot of outside.
Well, what you included in the proposal was a little bit for signage, I believe, right, Becky?
Yeah.
So there's a monument sign, included, as well as the sidewalk rework and some landscaping work that would be required to accomplish that egress.
And then I would turn to Bill in terms of the condition of the parking lot, which we've been talking about.
Right, and we've been looking at the parking lot in the 5-year plan. I think we're thinking more than maybe the next 2 years if this were to happen.
Right.
Is, not to interrupt, but like, I'm trying to place, if you're, let's say, walking and you're coming to a board meeting, there's no sidewalk right on the lower level. It's like just the driveway, and then there's a sidewalk in front of the building, so they'd have to come up top and then
The
go
lower
down
level,
that
there's an
stairs.
entrance in the lower level.
But it's not connected by sidewalk, right?
Well, it's in the parking lot. You walk through the parking lot.
I
No,
just,
you're right, there is not a sidewalk along that access, that-
the entry.
that northern loop.
Yeah.
Sam?
I like the design that we have. I think it meets our needs now, and we have that future space, which is great, but we can't really expand parking at that site. You know, my concern is that, you know, we're talking 10 years, are we gonna have enough space to park all these people? That, you know, then we're back to another parking issue. But with the needs that we have right now, I think this is a good design. I echo the concern about the sidewalk. And I also think that we need to make sure that when we have board meetings, we need to have signage on the top floor as well, so, you know, people know that they need to go down. But I like this, but I'd definitely like to read through it some more.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
The property that the apartment complex is on, has that sale been finalized?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
We have the money from that.
Okay, I wanted to verify that. Thank you.
It closed at the beginning of November.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
So, I mean, when I look at, so right now, most of our meeting groups would come in through the front door, and they would go to the stairs, probably, right? And then
Or lobby, or elevator, I mean.
Or the elevator. but almost have to use the elevator. It just seems like, I mean, nothing you can do about it, I mean, it just seems like a walkabout. Is that gonna happen? Do people do that? I mean, are we gonna make it as easy as for people to get into the building? As far as me, I'm not saying it's possible, I'm just asking, is there, to me, the having the stairs to the back, which is probably irreplaceable, is kind of a burden to the whole design. Cause it just seems like we do a lot of, making it so it's an open meeting. It's a fair amount of travel for some people. Not so much with the elevator, I get that, but is there, it's impossible probably, right, to move that stairway?
Yeah.
Stairways are,
Nothing is
I
impossible,
would say
it's
it's not
just costly.
impossible, but it's not been explored in this
Yeah.
exercise.
I also am like, I've been thinking it's kind of neat, they'll maybe get more comfortable with the village hall, like that they'll get to walk by and see those things and, you know, instead of just coming here, like, what's beyond there? I don't think I ever knew that.
Did they,
People come in, they go down here, and they
Yes.
come in, they go.
So was it, I have a couple
It's a
questions.
wounded duck.
did you
One
flip-flop
is,
it?
how much parking do we have here? How many stalls?
Flip-flop it.
At this building?
Mhm. Do we know?
Do you know, Bill?
No, top of my head.
Do we have more or less parking stalls here?
I wanna almost say it's pretty comparable.
I was gonna think the same thing. It appears like we have more, but in fact, we don't. And none of the stalls that direction besides the ones right here along the building are technically on village property.
So has anybody parked in any of those stalls this evening?
Or over there?
Out here,
Beyond.
Yeah.
I parked it
Yeah,
all.
I'm over there.
okay? My point, with regards to parking is that it's almost an identical situation to here, where we have our parking there, but we also have a big parking lot right next to us with the school. And I don't know that we have a relation, or any kind of negotiated situation with the mall here for when we have larger groups of people here and all those stalls get taken. So we don't really have a different situation over there, I don't believe, than what we have here. As far as costs, you know, we haven't really had you present that yet, so that's coming, I know. But what was the rationale for moving the chambers downstairs? Because originally it was gonna be upstairs, correct?
Right.
Because to me, that makes the most sense, because your main entrance is on the front. Why are we putting the chambers downstairs where it's a little bit difficult to get to comparatively? It would be like this building having to
Yeah,
go
that solves my
to
stairway
the
problem.
back and go down the steps, as opposed to we have steps here. But if people had to come through here and go to the back over there to go to the steps to go down, that would be a little bit of a,
It's a wounded duck.
it's just, it's choppy is what I'm saying. And,
then you have the overflow parking up on top too.
right, so I'm still in favor of, if there's a way to keep the boardroom upstairs, I would be in favor of that more than what you've shown tonight, moving it to the lower level. If the food pantry was still in, would the design still have been with the boardroom being in the basement?
Becky and I talked about that. From a functional perspective, this presents the best functioning outcome. Did you?
We did land on moving board chambers before the food bank was in discussion. So that was based on square footage usage. We did some layouts where we split sort of the the daily operations of both, sort of like Todd has described it, right? The engineering and permitting and construction development side versus the administrative side, and kind of splitting that. And the best use of the square footage was to keep all of those operations on one level.
I like it downstairs. I guess the day-to-day, the 90% of the use of the building seems like a better space for that versus the, night usage of the downstairs.
But access for the public, for public meetings, for the board meetings?
Yeah, the path is
It's
not a
cumbersome.
simple path,
Right.
the way most people would take
I
it.
mean, to me, if I look at this, if you could take the right side and on the first floor and put it in maybe the future area for the lower level, and take the meeting rooms and move them up to the left side of the first floor, or the right side of the first floor. And then you could combine that with the conference room.
That's what I
It gets
thought.
to be a pretty big space, maybe for a meeting. For our meetings, it actually would be larger than what we have today with 34, because you could maybe combine the conference room with that somehow, with an open up wall or something. Well, I don't know. It's just something to think about.
So you kind of went where I was going, Gary, with
Yeah.
that, on the right-hand side. I just felt like that right-hand side could be dropped downstairs and just reverse it, flip it. The conference room, I think you could have a little bit smaller conference room right off of the boardroom, and I think that's where the closed sessions would go into. I think that would be great. That's gonna be about the same size as what you have down here, roughly. The mechanical room where it's at kind of limits what can be done down there, more so. So I think it'd be easier to work around those offices. Does the right hand of the building have anything to do with the left hand necessarily on a daily basis, that they can't? I think I agree with what you're saying, Gary. If they're underneath in that future space, it's just up and down the steps on both sides,
Yeah.
both ways, versus,
And I get Todd's point. If you want your staff, it'd be nice to have your staff all on one floor. It's easier to monitor and interact and do all of those things. Yet, maybe our role here is, even though we don't have meetings that often here, but I think it's important that for the community, for those people that attend, I think we need to make that convenient for them. I don't know.
I think another option that what we could be explored is we could, on the lower level, instead of having the board chambers on the right, we could perhaps see if they could be on the left side, so that way there'd be a direct path down from the elevator with a separate entrance, and then you'd have a direct entrance off the lobby here.
Here.
That way all the staff could remain
Yeah,
on one floor.
And you have that flex space to
Right.
add to it,
And we
so.
could put it, there could be a door here, we could have a, door there, right from the boardroom.
I just don't know how that
No.
size is, but.
so there's several different opinions here right now on what we're thinking. I mean, I think the building is a great location. I think one of the things that the school district's been very patient with us on is we have talked about moving over here. And we've already kind of had that, we are going over there. And now we're kind of, sounds like some of us are pulling back a little bit, and I don't want to send a mixed message to the school district right now, with this.
Well,
because-
maybe we touch on, going back a little bit in our conversation, and this is, Brian reminded me of this. Let's talk about why we started to talk about this in the first place. It's because of the property assets that we have. And even though the jury's still out on this building, if we wanted to sell one of them, this is the one that's gonna make us any money. That one is not gonna accomplish that, the library building. So utilizing that asset for a municipal purpose with some potential future, who knows what, with this, that's the logic behind why that move made sense for us. So going back to that point of reminder, is probably worth noting.
Agreed. So, Ms. Planner? I can't remember your name, I'm
Becky?
sorry.
Becky Brown?
Becky, thank you.
Yep.
You've heard comments. What are your thoughts on our comments? We don't know all the details. Stuff we're saying, it might be like, well, you can't structurally do that, or you can't do it, there's no way we can do that. Listening to what you've heard, what are your comments back to us?
And I'm surprised it hasn't come up here yet tonight, but I have had other comments when we've reviewed this with other members and just kind of through development, that lower level parking lot, actually, I had heard people say that actually was really preferred for parking. So I think, with that in mind, the accessibility to get to the board chambers in the lower level was like, oh, okay, well, that was a reassuring comment. The comments about maybe flipping what's happening with the board chambers from left to right, structurally, I guess it could be equally as the building's very symmetrical. So I don't know that structurally I have any issue doing that. The ability to maintain the village staff on one level as well. I mean, we were thinking about the security, if there was an individual perhaps working one department and was split and on a floor by themselves versus being able to be continuous on that floor with perhaps other members of the village. So that was an appeal, I think, to keep everybody at a mean level.
One note to that is, we're not a big staff here. We've got 3 serve at 3-4, 1, 2, 3, 4 practical service areas right here. And I'll tell you that all of us, all the staff here play a role in sharing and caring for the customers of each other on a relatively often basis. If this is split up, and this is the functional aspect that I was referring to earlier, among others, that ability to be right there monitoring one another's functions would be cut in half. And I think the ability to collaborate as staff would be weakened. Believe me, we toyed with the up and down and the movements. It wasn't a flippant choice to see how best to function the way that we engaged with our citizens. And I'm not saying that your comments are flippant either. I just want to give some perspective to some of the whys.
So on the downstairs, is there, just because I can't remember, I remember there's like the kids' library was down there. Is there natural light at all on the downstairs?
Only from the lobby space, the north foyer there. There's a glass door there and a glass door there, and then that glass wall with the double doors.
But that is, structurally, is there space for more light there, or is it?
The other 3 sides of the building are built into the hill.
So what are we trying to do tonight?
Well, tonight, if the board was comfortable with where we stood on this design, the next step would be to engage CBI in the phase 2 prepping for construction bid these plans. But we can spend more time on these plans. We're not stuck up against a hard and fast timeline necessarily. We'll talk a little bit later. Brian, you just gave me the funny look. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the timing we want to work out with the school district with regards to the upper parking lot. But I think we're still within reason to say that we have time to still
Okay,
think
so
about this.
before we go on any further, do you want to go over the numbers quick?
Yeah, if the last time we talked about this, I think your budgeted range was on the low end 700 something, on the high end 1.2. That's when we were contemplating a one level, master space. We've had to split to 2 levels. We've seen changes in the building economy that have had impacts on cost projections. And that brings us to this budget proposal, which has us at 1.2 to 1.5 for the total cost. Becky, do you want to give any context to the changes in this proposal?
Yeah,
then?
so the budget you were referring to would have been that was early. So Todd has noted the additional cost with regards to the egress, so that has adjusted in the budget, as well as we've taken a harder look at some of the utilities within inside of the facility. So there's been an extended budget for replacing HVAC and air conditioning units that are antiquated. So this would include an upgrade to those systems as well. Those were I would say your 3 biggest buckets of impact on the budget.
And if you recall, not that the source of revenue should guide your expenditure decision, but since we started this project, along has come the sale of land to Heartland Properties from Country View Apartments. The $570,000 is in the bank. We've closed on that. Thanks, Brian, for all your help. So that's an element to the funding component that is new since you saw that first plan a year or so ago.
Can I ask one more question? How many square foot new building would that get you right now?
That's not a number I'm gonna be able to estimate on a square footage. We specialize in interior remodels, so not ground up buildings.
You're saying to build a new facility?
Mm-hmm.
All-
What?
To demolish the building and put a new building in that site or a
Well,
different
no,
site?
on a unique site, I mean, separate site.
Well, if you recall, we did include on the new library site to the
West.
west, the capacity to expand either the library facility or additional municipal facility. I think on one level, though, that wasn't much more than 5,000 square feet. But the notion of multiple levels, because that grade falls off, seems like it'd be possible there too. We did preserve some expansion room there, but haven't evaluated it deeply.
And 5,000 square foot would not meet your needs. It would not, based on your programming of what you need.
Correct.
How did we go from then, we had enough space with our initial design to we didn't have enough space, just being on the top floor?
No, our first crack at it revealed to us, to you, in our exercise, that it wasn't gonna be sufficient. We presented that, and that feedback sent us back to the drawing board. And I think for good reason, but it's been part of our exercise here.
Okay.
I think certainly cost containment, the notion of condensing the space utilization was part of our early approach, and as it played out, it just didn't make the most sense.
I mean, I think the library site, I mean, you've got the community room that you could use for our meetings, that's a usable space. You'd have to have probably 2 levels of 2 floors to accommodate the village staff in that area that's left. So, I mean, I still think that could be an option, but it's not gonna be an inexpensive one.
Okay. I think if you guys are good with this, I'm gonna ask if you guys are good with this right now. I think we should take this and digest it. And at our next, well, we wanted to keep our next meeting somewhat short, but maybe on the 21st.
No, like I said, that's okay. You'll see in the memo that I included, here we go, a schedule as it would relate to next steps. And as you can see here, if we proceed tonight with the phase 2, here we are, late summer, possibly being in a new space. 1, 2, 3 month impact on this, I don't think hampers things. I mean, things aren't getting cheaper, you can always say that, but what's a month or two to a process? So I'm okay talking about this again, perhaps in January.
How does everybody feel about that? Good, good, good.
Would phase 2, I guess, when does the outside come into play with this, besides just like the exits? I think that,
Well, I think if the board wants to direct us to present additional exterior modifications, we could spend some time with the landscape architect and suggest to you some modifications. Namely, perhaps, Aaron, that sidewalk along the lower entrance.
So there's only so much we can do out there, first off, in my opinion. I'd say if we want to look at the exterior, we're not seeing anything exterior really in these things we're being shown. I'd say go there and walk around and see what's there and give feedback to Todd so he can
Yep.
share that. That's what I would suggest we all do, if that's your concern, is exterior modifications. Because I understand what they're doing with the sidewalks to get access out for everyone. The vegetations and things, there's probably some requirements on what we have to do with that, with the change in terrain a little bit with those sidewalks. So I just think it'd be a good idea to go look at it. And I just don't see there's a lot we can do with the site as it sits with the way the parking is done, because your parking is coming right up, and then you're going around, and your parking is right there too, so there's not all kinds of landscapings that are really available to be done around the building.
I agree. I think just in hearing what the board is saying, like, getting people to the boardroom seems like the biggest concern of the board. And I'm thinking, I walked here, I don't wanna walk down a dark, one way. It's like, fits I don't know how we had kids get to the bottom level there, and like, with no sidewalk forever. Like, I think that should just be a part of it if we're, that worried about people getting to the boardroom, but.
If it helps just to give you any comfort, I mean, I work in Mount Horeb too, and their boardroom is on the second floor. And so there's 2 different entrances. You can come to it from either side. And I would say after 3 meetings, everybody knows, when you first walk in, you're having to go upstairs on one side or the other. They're going to find it.
Yeah.
Just as one example, I'm not saying you have to do that and you don't need to not move it to the first floor, but my experience is having it not necessarily right as you walk in the door is not going to be a problem for the residents. There's signage and they find it pretty easily.
But ease of access is a really good point. If the boardroom is to be downstairs, I think we should talk, and Becky, we could perhaps calculate some cost per square foot for that linear stretch for sidewalk. I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Maybe even some lighting, exterior lighting along that makes sense too. We'd be prepared to come back with more information in January for you on that.
So that's what I'd recommend, is we go and see it, and any recommendations you have, give them to Todd, and they can bring them back with what those costs will look like too, because adding lighting and various things, there's costs to do that, obviously. So, okay? We good, everybody? Okay?
Yep, yeah, very good. We're not discouraged. This is part of the grinding process, so thank you for the feedback.
Meeting process. All right. Thank you for coming tonight as well.
Thank you.
All right. Discuss and take action on proposed 2022 employee COVID emergency sick leave and testing policy. Todd?
So fresh off Caitlin's desk last Friday before she left, is a modification, very slight modification to our policy going forward that we'd like the board to consider approving tonight. If you recall, we established a bank 80-hour annually for employees who are vaccinated of additional sick leave in 4 scenarios. On the first page of the policy, you see those 4 scenarios where we would extend that additional sick leave. Our recommendation for this policy going forward in post this meeting would be to allow 40 hours of leave in 2022 for that same category of employees, those employees who are vaccinated. Non-vaccinated employees, if in a condition of COVID exposure or with COVID, would need to use their own bank of leave that they've received or built up. The only other change to this policy, besides 40 hours, which is in the first paragraph from 80, is on the 3rd page, which identifies that the board may make changes to the policy at any time, which seems to make a lot of sense with the way this pandemic has thrown its curveballs. And then identifying at a minimum, and this is because employees have asked, how long must I keep testing? How long must, et cetera. This suggests at a minimum, this policy is going to be reviewed on a quarterly basis to determine if there's modifications, but might be more often depending on CDC, Dane County guidelines. Otherwise, there's no changes or modifications beyond those. But happy to answer questions or see if you'd like to go in any other different direction on this. I know that Caitlin reached out to Bill last week, the week before, to get your take on our approach on this policy. I don't know if you want to share your thoughts. I believe this is in line with.
I think so. I mean, the question is because we're testing weekly right now, and as the transmissibility rate goes down, which goes faster as we expected pandemics, which we also expect to last years, not months. Yeah, we probably are looking at a longer term plan. I mean, that's the newest one obviously is 2-3 days for transmissibility between people. So I don't know if the once a week is going to cut that anymore for the non-vaccinated people.
The other question I've heard, Bill, is the notion that newer variants might be as easily contracted by vaccinated employees
True.
versus non, and whether
Right,
testing should.
the concept that the vaccine keeps you from getting, you are still, even when we get the flu vaccine, we usually will get, we get the flu vaccine to keep us from getting sick from the flu. That is true, and that's probably what will happen. What the vaccine does is basically keeps you out of the hospital to a certain extent, which affects our costs and our safety things, and also probably makes you less transmissible. I mean, but no one knows that for sure either. But yeah, there is, the concept of our, how we manage the vaccine is probably gonna change also, just like everything else has changed in COVID times, so. I think the idea that it's definitely less risk for people, for health and the health of others if the more people who are vaccinated, and encouraging it anyway, definitely makes sense. So whatever we can do to encourage that.
Yeah, and our policy in several places talks about our urging for employees to be vaccinated. Again, it's not become under your policy a condition of employment per se, but this policy issues that urge, both in the words it's used as well as the benefit that is conveyed to vaccinated employees.
That I think is a reasonable thing.
This is reasonable?
I think so. I mean, it encourages people, obviously, to be, the question is as far as we could go. Is that, you feel this is as far as we can go right now, then? I mean, there is obviously the risk that somebody acquires it. Somebody could still get sick from somebody who hasn't had it, and if they're at our work, are we responsible for them? I mean, I think that process is going to evolve over the next year or two. It's like, did you do everything you could so that when as a patron to your place, did I pick it up there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. My best answer is these words right here. In a month from now may be the dumbest approach based on what we're learning in the pandemic.
COVID only means change to me. I mean, everything changes every week, so at least quarterly, you probably have to look at it.
I'm trying to understand, Bill, if you're vaccinated, you still get COVID. Now you're not taking tests, you may have it, not know it. You can transmit it just as easy as somebody who's never been vaccinated.
Possibly, right.
I don't know, but, so, we're making people get tested who haven't been vaccinated. We're concerned about them giving somebody COVID, yet somebody who's been vaccinated can give that same person COVID just as easy.
Yeah, it looks like the clearance rate is much faster, though, for the vaccinated people. They clear much faster. So basically, you're looking at, there is always windows. Obviously, we're taking care of people who are, COVID breakthrough cases, but many less COVID breakthrough people in the people who have gotten the third vaccine. I mean, much less. So it gets to be this, what do we do the next step? Are we gonna ask for everybody to be the third vaccine?
So I had someone tell me the other day that they had all their vaccines, they tested positive for COVID. They didn't feel bad at all.
Right.
But they went back 2 weeks later, assuming they could test negative, and they were still testing positive, and the doctor said that they could go on for weeks.
Yeah,
and
months,
weeks and test
actually
positive.
months, because you're not actually contagious. We consider COVID recovered after 10 days.
An unvaccinated employee under our policy, Gary, if they do contract COVID, are exempt from testing for 90 days.
We believe they can't transmit after the 10th day.
Okay.
Brian, any legal?
I'll be,
With
this
regards
has
to
been
this?
more of a personnel issue that attorneys have been asked to look at, and that's kind of outside the scope of what I do.
Although the initial version was constructed with the guidance from our labor attorney back half a year ago when we put this in front of you the first time.
So in your opinion, Brian,
Okay?
do we have any legal challenges with this or problems potentially?
You mean from the question that was asked, if somebody comes
Mm-hmm.
to the village hall and let's say they're coming to get a permit and then I don't think that you should have any legal, because they've made the decision to come in, and then you start to get into issues like if somebody came in and they didn't have the vaccine, then, for example, I would say you definitely do not have liability there, because they chose not to get the vaccine. Where it gets a little bit difficult, I think the worst case scenario for you, and as I understand this policy would take care of this scenario, you knowingly have somebody who's an employee who has just been tested positive for COVID, and that yet they're still at the front desk, and then somebody contracts it. That would be a scenario where I would be a little concerned about liability, but if I understand the policy, if somebody tests positive for COVID, then they're going to be, the only people who are tested are people who haven't gotten vaccinated, and if they were to test positive, then they wouldn't be at work. That should take care of kind of the worst case scenario for the village.
Okay, as far as the quarterly, evaluating it and I'll get right to you after that. As far as evaluating it quarterly, is that enough?
Again, I mean, the other choice would be that if something does change, like, I mean, that we would be able to activate earlier. If we, I mean, does it lock us to a quarterly thing? I mean, would it?
Well, no, and that's what we're suggesting,
So we're
that,
evaluating it at least quarterly.
At least quarterly,
And we
right.
could do it monthly if we need to, based on things that are occurring.
Right.
and I think
That's what I would recommend, yeah.
and I'd remind the board that if we're between board meetings, and there's a matter related to the pandemic emergency that needs to be addressed from an emergency perspective, Chris and the village administrator can work to address an interim emergency action. So hopefully we know enough.
Have we extended that?
No, I don't think
resolution?
that's still in place.
What's that?
We didn't extend that, so that's not in place anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's
Oh, that's
I
right,
think my
that's right.
recollection
No,
is
you're right.
every resolution we had an endpoint.
you're right,
and
you're right.
That doesn't mean you can't do it again. Like, you could, if you wanted to put that similar resolution, you can put those powers back in place that you had in 2020.
Although I think it's fair to say that we know a lot more now than we knew then, and we're dealing with some serious unknowns that made more sense then. But we meet I think we can
Yeah, I
address
think
it
we're
as
good
needed.
if we, as long as, at least quarterly, and then if we have to, because things happen, we can meet as often as needed. So,
One more question.
go ahead, Nyla.
As what you were talking about, Brian, pertaining to someone getting COVID from staff, how would that apply to emergency personnel?
Now I don't know the answer to that question. It's not something that I've been asked to look into.
Okay.
The only thing that I would say is one of the reasons, I don't want to get too cliche-ish here, but when we watch the news and we watch commercials, obviously EMS folks are called heroes, and they are. And one of the reasons why they are is they're taking greater risks than everybody else is out there, and that's one of the things that people appreciate for what they're doing. So I don't know what would happen if somebody who's an employee who's in EMS gets it, but I can't answer that question. I haven't looked at it.
Thank you.
Okay, so based on that feedback, the policy's here. I think it covers everything we needed to cover at this point. I'll make the motion to approve the proposed COVID emergency sick leave policy for 2022.
I'll second.
I think it was Phil first. Okay, so I made a motion, second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
your turn, Bill.
No, not yet, not
No,
yet.
I gotta be careful with that.
So, hey, Chris, so your next two items, Chris, we think that item 4 could reasonably start in open session and perhaps even end in open session. So I'd suggest taking that before number 3, and then we can go into closed session on.
Any challenges with us reordering 4 in front of 3 from anybody? No. Okay. So then we're gonna discuss and take action on agreement between the Village of Waunakee and Waunakee Community School District regarding use of former library site.
So if you recall, I want to say it was probably October, or maybe it was September, the village board approved a memorandum of understanding relating to the old or the former library sites, because we have, as part of a quitclaim deed.
Sorry, real quick. I emailed out the latest version today. Does anybody want me to print that
I
if you
need
don't
it.
have
I
it?
didn't get it.
How many need that printed because you don't have the email?
Well,
A couple,
if you wanna get it, yeah.
all right, I'll get that printed while Brian works through here.
So we had a prior, the village board approved a memorandum of understanding before, and this all pertains to the fact that at the former library site, there is a portion of the parking lot that was utilized for the library site that says if the land's not used for municipal purposes, then the parking area would revert back to the school district. And so we've been working with, and the school district obviously has an interest in making sure that whatever is in that building is compatible with the uses that are at the high school. So that's what resulted in us working on this memorandum of understanding to try to get clarity with them on how we're gonna use the former library site. It went to the school district board, and they had some concerns with it, and I think the way that it was drafted before, it said, we would make the move within 1 year of Village Hall from this site to the former library site. But we also had some language in there that said, I mean, it wasn't we would have at least 75% of the move completed. And then we had some language in there that said, but that essentially could get extended if we had force majeure. And the easiest, that's a tornado wipes out the building. That's the, acts of God. Right now, the major issue that everybody is running in for force majeure issues is the supply chain issue. And from what I was told from their attorney, they had a little bit of a concern that they felt it was too open-ended as to when we would make that move. And so with what Todd sent out to you today and what's going to be handed out to you, all of the recitals in the document have remained the same. And what we have is they wanted a fixed time period. When are you going to make this move? And they wanted 2 years. So essentially they said, look, before it was 75% complete at 1 year. We understand that you might not be able to make that entire move within 1 year, so we want it 2 years. And if you don't move it in 2 years, the village hall, that then you are going to sign a quitclaim deed that's going to let that parking area revert back to the school district. And essentially they wanted, the way it was explained to me is they just wanted something concrete. So within the document that is now being passed out, again, everything on page 1 is the same. They've asked for this concrete time period of 2 years, and so that's in there in section 2A. My understanding is that there was kind of a staff level meeting, and I think Todd was there.
Chris and I met.
Okay, so Chris and Todd met with, I guess, maybe the school district administrator and the school board president.
Right.
And other items were kind of discussed as they were explaining why they wanted the 2-year concrete time period. And so when you look at section 2B, essentially what that's saying is, hey, if we're 1 year out after we've signed this agreement and all of a sudden we see we're having a bunch of problems, we want to be able to meet with you, school district. Now, there would be no requirement that the school district extend that 2-year period, but there would at least be an obligation to allow a discussion. So that's what 2B is. I think 2C is basically every 6 months until we've made the move, if they want updates from us as to what's going to happen, we would be willing to provide those updates. And the last thing that we essentially added, the village added, was on section 3B. If it turns out that we don't move the village hall within the 2-year period, but we move it there in 3 years or within 2.5 years, we want from them a lease that's still going to allow us to use that parking area. So at a high level, what this all comes down to is, depending on what the village board decides, assuming that you move the village hall, if the village hall gets moved within 2 years, essentially nothing's going to happen. The village continues to use the upper parking area just like it was used for the former library site. If the village hall is not moved, then the parking area is going to revert back to the school district. And kind of the middle ground is if we move it, but it's not within that 2-year time period, then we'd have a lease that at least would allow us to use the parking area. So that's essentially where we've landed after the initial MOU was prepared, approved by you. It went to the school district. They had concerns, like I said, with a little bit too open-ended from that standpoint. And then, as Todd and Chris noted, they met with the school district administrator and school board president to maybe identify some of these other procedural aspects, I would say. And so, I mean, I've kind of provided my explanation. I'm certainly willing to answer whatever questions that you have. We did put it in closed session to the extent that if you were to ask questions that, if I fully believe that as your attorney, it's something that we need to discuss confidentially, I'll let you know that I think that's one that we would need to go into closed session on.
Questions? Okay, hearing no questions, it sounds like everybody is okay with this, so do we need a motion, Brian, right now?
Yeah.
Okay,
And if the motion, if you could allow for, we don't know exactly what the school district is gonna do with this, and so if you could give Todd and I a little bit of flexibility just on language issues as opposed to substantive issues. So just motion to approve the MOU, subject to final review and approval by the village administrator and village attorney, that would be helpful.
I'll move we approve the MOU, subject to final approval by village administrator and village attorney.
I'll second it.
motion by Moran, second by Nyla Fry. Any other comments? Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, then back to number 3, discuss and take action to negotiate employment terms for village clerk candidate. So we will be going into closed.
Yep, and I'll just note that we have a preferred candidate. We've extended a tentative offer to the candidate, but the terms that we're proposing are beyond the terms that administration is authorized to approve upon employment. That's why we're heading into closed session to seek approval from the village board for those terms.
All right, so I should read, right, Brian? Okay, village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. So I would look for a motion to go into,
Which one did you read, Chris?
oh, I read the wrong one, sorry. I was still on number 4.
Strike that.
Thank you. Strike that. Good thing we didn't make a motion then. All right. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The village board may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. So I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that the village board convene in closed session.
Motion by Sam, second by Dr. Rannum. And all of you are scolding by me right now because you could have stopped me from having to read that whole thing. And then going back over. So, all right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Todd?
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Bill Rannum,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Gary Hersberg,
Yes.
Phil Willems.
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
Yes.
We are in closed session.